Hello, I'm Michael Palmer. I'm the town clerk here in Falmouth. I've been a town clerk since 2003, and part of my job is to deal with the document management and storing of documents within the town. And since I've been here, and probably before that, where the town has been in a situation where we've talked about trying to improve the way we handle and store documents. They had been stored in the basement underneath the selectmen's meeting room. Has been a storage room for our documents, and it's that basement room in town hall is in a flood zone, so it wasn't the ideal situation. So again, for the last 20 years or so, they've been trying to relocate that room and to identify a building or a room or a space that was available to do this has always been a challenge until we opened the new water filtration plant on Long Pond, and this the building that we're in today is the old water filtration building, and we're using one room in that building for our document storage. It's an historic building. It's actually a very beautiful building, and we're using one of the rooms out of kind of a segmented building. It's almost a perfect fit for the documents that we have to store, because you need to have a building that has limited access, and because we're right near the water source for the town, this building requires that there's limited access coming down here. So it's actually a good use of the room, and we've looked at other different places throughout the town, and we've never been able to come to agreement on where these documents should go. So I think we've found a good place for them to find a home for. And moving forward with the project, and it's a good exercise, as anybody knows that has moved from one house to another. You kind of organize and you sift through all the in this case our documents, and you determine their value, their historic value, and you return whether they're permanent records, whether they're records we need whether they're records we need to keep in order to manage and run the town, or in some cases where there were documents that can be destroyed. In doing through that exercise, we're able to transfer all the documents that were in the basement of Town Hall, and we were able to destroy some documents that were no longer necessary to keep. And we refer to the retention schedule set forth by the Secretary of the Commonwealth, the Public Records Division. They have a record inventory, a record retention schedule for all documents, and if we go by that, then we can kind of rotate out the documents that are no longer necessary to run the town. And that's what getting this organizational system here has really been helpful in getting to that point where documents can, after their retention period, can move to be destroyed or shredded or discarded of. And just making this move has allowed us to get a system in place so we don't have documents that are unnecessary to be stored. Documents, they're kind of fall into a couple different classifications. Some are necessary for the running of the town, and some that become obsolete and are unnecessary. And that's really the basics for the retention schedule and the retention period. A lot of the documents here will have a retention schedule, although there are some permanent records here that are necessary for historic value or and so forth. The things that are essential to run the town on the day-to-day basis normally have a retention schedule of anywhere from 3 to 10 years, and then at the 10-year period you're able to get rid of them where their usefulness is really no longer necessary. Well, one of the goals in moving here was to make sure, or at least one of my goals, to make sure we didn't reach the point of capacity. And with the system that we put in place in the bank, where we're going to bring banker boxes, so someone can identify a banker box that they need back at Town Hall, and we can make arrangements to pick that up here and bring it back to Town Hall, and the other way around. People have banker boxes that they want stored here. They can be labeled, and then we can bring them over here and store them here. But again, the idea of one of my goals was not to be at 100% capacity from day one. So with this shelving system that we did install, we left ample room for expansion and for the inclusion of other documents that maybe people didn't have in the basement of Town Hall just because of the organizational system that was in place there and the room that was available there. There may be departments of the town that now have documents that have just been sitting around in storage that they would like to bring to a central archival or storage place and be inventoried so we know what's here and be put on a retention schedule and go through that whole process. So I think as we move forward, I'm going to find that other departments have some more boxes that they'd like to move over here, some more banker boxes, and store them here rather than in their offices at Town Hall. But I anticipated that, so I left room for expansion with the current setup and what we did with the shelving and the boxes here. Well, again, having a system in place of document management is the main goal we have coming here. In the basement of Town Hall, everyone had access to it. So a person on the committee from 15 years ago came and brought all the documents and dropped them off in the room. And that committee changed 4 or 5 times, and then we get to 15 years later, and we go into the room and somebody's asking, what are these documents? And no one has any idea what they are. By transferring them here and having a system to transfer them here in an inventory, we're keeping track of what the records are. So if 3 or 4 committees down the road, if someone's looking for work that a committee did back 10 years ago, we're going to have an inventory of what it is, and we're going to know that that's here, and it won't be just in a pile saying, oh, what is that box at the bottom of the pile? We'll know what's here, and it'll be organized, and we just won't have access to everybody. We'll try to keep a system in place and have a limited access. Obviously, some department heads will have to come here on their own more often to obtain some documents. To accommodate that, though, we're actually looking at doing some more scanning of documents. So before even documents are moved over here, we'll look at doing some scanning projects and then be able to retrieve their documents from the desktop. And then we're meeting the requirements of the public records law in order to maintain these documents for the retention period before they can be destroyed, but we'll have access to them at Town Hall without having to come over here. But as of right now, we haven't completely done that or met those needs, so some department heads are having to come over here to find a document, or but I'm trying to maintain limited access so we don't run into a situation where we just have, again, piles of boxes sitting on the floor and not put back on the shelves and not be put back in an orderly fashion.